Ended.
Okay, this is the December 4th core team meeting. And the first item on the agenda is the Docs RS team. Do they need an RFC or draft RFC before we can merge this pull request for the team?
Actually, wait, the current status of the pull request is to add them as a subteam of DevTools. So with the current status of the pull request, I don't think they need anything special because we add subteams of teams all the time. That's supposed to be like low effort. I believe a hope is to have a top level docs.rs team and like maybe figure out how that fits in with crates.io and the website, and maybe like there are lots of thoughts on that thread, but that would probably need an RFC, like adding a new top level team. But the current state of the pull request can be merged as is. Yeah.
Okay, does that resolve, is everyone okay with that? And does that resolve the questions, Mark?
Fine by me.
I think it does. I was not clear that that was the current state or the state that we wanted to merge it with.
Well, I don't think that's, I think it's unclear if that's the state that we want to merge it with. So what I'm trying to say is that the current state of the pull request is something we can merge without an RFC. That said, there was debate in the thread whether or not that is what we want. And what people seem to be gravitating towards is a separate team. And it's unclear if that separate team needs an RFC. I kind of am leaning towards it needing an RFC. Other people also are, but I'm not sure. So like, yeah.
I personally don't think even that needs an RFC. I don't think we've done that in the past, have we?
Yeah.
I think we have, and I think we should. Whether we have or not.
I feel like we have for like major changes, but not for creating just individual teams. But
I think we have, but if not, we should be saying what the scope of the team is. Like, I don't think an RFC is such a huge hurdle. I mean, I think we could create a team, an RFC that says we're making a DocsRS team, but even here, there are some questions, right? Like, do they come into the core team or not, and so on. And I don't understand why. It seems like it's a non-trivial decision to add a new team.
And we've talked about starting to make a charter for it. Was the charter idea for teams or for working groups or both, or?
Working groups have been using charters, but really I feel like everyone should have charters. Working groups have been using charters because they're the only teams that have been formed in the last, like top level team organization thingies that have been formed in the last few years. And before that, we were never doing charters.
It seems like a charter here is pretty straightforward, right? Like care and maintenance of the DocsRS service or something.
Yeah.
I guess one thing I don't know is I think it would be okay to merge this in some form that we aren't necessarily thinking is the optimal configuration, and then re-examine our team structure, like at our leisure. But I don't know how much it matters, really. It seems like something where if we did a good job of it, it could be great of structuring our teams and thinking about this. But I feel like I have this feeling that we're blocking progress, and I don't like that, but maybe that's just because there's an open PR and that feels like something to me.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think like we do need to think about our team structure. Like this just feels like another thing where things don't fit nicely into what we have at the moment. So for my money, I'd rather do the lightweight thing, which is make them a sub-team of docs.rs with a note that this is one of the things that we want to revisit probably next year. Like I don't think that like being a sub-team of tools is not gonna prevent them doing any work, right? Like it's not a showstopper for a few months.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. There's no immediate problem. It's more like if we adjust things, we might create some useful synergies or something. But I don't know.
Okay, I can reply on the thread that we feel that we can merge this PR as is without a draft RFC. And then we will consider whether an RFC or similar document is necessary in the future and sort of get back to the team at some point.
And I think you should then just go ahead and merge it.
Yes, I can do that as well.
If you're gonna leave the comment.
Sounds good. Thank you. Okay, next item is the team-wide stand-up guidelines, Florian.
Currently none. No update.
Okay. Next is stage siege, stage design, whatever we call it, Nico.
I forget where I last updated. I don't have the document in front, but the two things. First, I'm working on a proposal that is to encapsulate the front end of the process. I think I talked about that. I have a blog post that I wanted to have posted before this meeting, but things came up. And we're having a meeting at the governance working group in 2 weeks' time to talk about it, which will be announced shortly. I have to write the announcement. So for folks who might be interested, there's some discussion happening around that. The one other thing I'd say is I'm framing this as a lane team transition, but with the explicit note of, you know, if it works well, perhaps we will extend it to other teams. But that's the current setup.
Okay. The next item is legal issues discussion status. Florian or Nico?
Same as last week. Seems like the people that were interested in it are all the people that are interested in it. So we're going to form a group and see how we fix these issues.
Did we scheduled a meeting in the compiler team to talk about the licensing, or did we not? I don't recall.
Didn't end up doing that because people didn't feel like a full meeting is necessary because it's unambiguous that the problem is there. And the preference was asking for people that are interested in this for forming a group for fixing it, and the only other person interested was Felix. There've been no responses.
Okay.
Unsurprisingly, licensing isn't a fun subject. No complaint here, but also it needs a very specific skill set and interest set. So.
Okay, white papers, Florian.
No movement.
Community team reorganization, Florian or Manish.
So the reorganization, we're still talking about how to slice and dice it exactly. There's another reorganization thing that came up yesterday in when we were discussing access control in the governance working group. We are thinking about moving the community team repositories that are still in use under Rostlang, because the reason we had and this might be something to talk about with other groups. The main reason for having the community team organization separate was because we didn't automate access control on Rostlang. So it was hard to make sure that everyone had consistent access to what they needed access to, and to make sure that people didn't have access to what they haven't got access to. This is now fixed. So we can move them back in to make sure we have a better overview who even has access to things that might be considered official.
Yeah, one other thing is, well, we should talk about it offline, but for the DevTools team repo or organization, I was going to send an email, but we might want to try to move that under Rustling too.
Okay. Next is roadmap planning, Nico.
We have a meeting scheduled for later today. If you don't have an invite and you want one, let me know. There have been a lot of posts, so try to read up on them if you can.
Okay, rough survey, Nico. It's open.
Survey's open. It's going for 2 weeks. As far as I know, we ironed out all the kinks that showed up in the first round. So yeah, I didn't look at how many responses yet or anything, but I assume we're getting them. I know we started getting them even before we opened it because of the draft pull request for the blog post. So.
Okay, governance working group. You alluded a bit to that, Nico.
Yeah, we kind of summarized it already, but we had a discussion in that last meeting about access rights and kind of came up with the policy that we're now planning to write eventually an RFC around it for how to manage the access rights to repos. But one of the parts of it was that everything's a lot easier if we have fewer GitHub orgs. So we're trying to rein that in. We decided not to, for the time being, to leave the domain working groups alone. That's kind of the one exception where we thought, well, there's like 2 exceptions where it makes sense to have separate orgs. One is something to do with infra, and the other was the domain working groups, and that was partly just because there's enough to bite off in one round. It might or might not make sense to reconsider that too. But yeah, and the next meeting is about staged RFCs, and it's in 2 weeks.
Okay, anything else for the open part of the meeting? No? Okay. If you could switch the recordings, please, Manish.